All right. Final segment of the show. Three interesting things. This is where we take three things that I found interesting that you have sent to me in my interesting at calnewport.com email address that all relate to the general theme here of trying to live a deep life. And I take three I like and we look at them. So if you are listening to this show, you might want to jump over to the YouTube version of the episode because the three things are visual. That's youtube.com/Cal Newport Media. We launch a video of the full episode of each podcast, usually the same day that it comes out. I'll explain in words what's on the screen here, but it's better to watch. So it's a good chance to jump over to YouTube. All right. The first interesting thing I want to talk about is the director, Guillermo Del Toro, or as I've discovered, his fans call him GDT, his so-called Bleak House. All right. So I've loaded on the screen now an article. There's a lot of articles about this. This happens to come from a Southern California radio station. And the headline here is Bleak House, a tour inside Guillermo del Toro's creative man cave. There is a picture of him in a Victorian decorated room with a terrifying monster statue. So here's the subhead. I'll read this. It's on the screen right now. The director behind Pan's Labyrinth and Hellboy owns a house filled with artifacts he has collected throughout his life. Now, the reason why we're hearing about this is there's a exhibit they're now doing where you can come and a museum exhibit where you can see a lot of these things. But the key thing is before this exhibit, he has a 2-story house filled with more than 10,000 items, artwork, sculptures, artifacts, books, movies collected over a lifetime. But he insists he's not collecting for collecting's sake. So let's dive a little deeper. Here's a Guillermo quote. This is a religious place for me. See, to me, everything that surrounds us is not a collection. It's relics. It's relics or it's talismans. Whatever you want to call them. They have a spiritual hold of who I am, essentially. This goes right back to the question we talked about before the break about the value of having symbolic objects to capture your values. GDT is getting right to the core of this. He sees these things he collects as relics. It's a power is being captured in there. Where is the Bleak House? It's in the suburbs. He just bought a house in the suburbs of LA near his existing house. And he gets into it later in this article. He gets into how this came about. He was collecting this stuff because if you know GDT, he does these beautiful, fantastical movies that often have the macabre or terrifying in them. So he was collecting these somewhat disturbing objects. And at some point, his wife very reasonably said, this cannot be in our house. Like, we have young kids. If you want to know what I'm talking about and you're watching on YouTube, I have an example on the page of something that's in his Bleak House. It's a man's face that has been ripped open and there's like jaws coming out of it. Like, it's not the type of stuff you want in your house. So he said, fine, I'll buy another house and that's where I'm going to store my collection. So he has the second house. Here's another big picture I put on the screen. It's cool, Jesse. Look at this. There's a monster, a giant Frankenstein head. The whole thing is done up Victorian, red walls. All the pictures are covered in framed art, but it's like weird, macabre, sort of Hieronymus Bosch style artwork. Like it's old lamps and bookcases. So, here's the quote, by the way. His wife said, that's too close to the kitchen. The kids are going to get freaked out. And GDT said, inside of me something cracked. And I said, I'm going to get my own place. He has a haunted mansion room based off the Disney thing. He has a room that simulates a rainstorm outside. He has 13 libraries. So each room has a different library. He used that as a research area. So like this one opens and you're in a room that's a haunted mansion. But the haunted mansion room has a library that's all about mythology, folklore, fairy tales, and myths, etc. So he uses this house not just to capture things that are valuable to him, but also as a source of creative inspiration. So he's not just reading about fairies when he's working on Pan's Labyrinth. He's in a haunted mansion room, taking these old volumes off of the shelf. I think this stuff really matters. And I talk about this a lot on the show. If you do any sort of creative endeavor where you're trying to alchemize value out of the stuff in your mind, environment matter, rituals matter, objects matter. If you're an accountant, you might say, this is crazy. You bought a second house just to store stuff. How indulgent or whatever. But this is at the core of what GDT does for a living. These fantastical, incredibly creative, inspired visual masterpiece style movies. This is just a completely pragmatic investment. And I think people might say something similar about the Deep Work HQ, but for what I do for a living, it's an investment that makes a huge amount of sense to have a place to come to that I'm specifically decorating to celebrate what I care about in terms of cognitive work, to have the ritual of coming here versus somewhere else. The lab we're building in here. I mean, Jesse saw today when he came back from vacation, I bought in a lot more electronics equipment because me and my oldest son are building things, and that's really important to me, and having that connection to. So it seems completely crazy to, I don't know, like my brother. But to me, because of what I do, it's like, of course I'm going to invest in this. It matters. Symbolic value matters. Ritual matters. Location matters. So anyways, I just think this is cool. I like this picture. So for those who are watching, there's a picture of a incredibly scary looking doll on an old Victorian chaise lounge. And I want to pull this up because of the photo caption, which just reads, "A couch piled with books and a demonic doll." It's an awesome photo caption. Here's the freaks room. That guy's I'm just showing, if you're listening, I'm just showing like terrifying pictures on the screen. Here's the simulated rainstorm room. Anyways, I put the link to this article in the show notes. So there's Frankenstein drinking tea. No, Frankenstein's monster, I should be precise here, drinking tea, film room. Anyways, I love that stuff. Jesse, who wins? GDT's Bleak House, Brandon Saracen's Underground Lair.
Seems like GDT had more stuff to look at.
I think it's right. I think he has the cooler house. It's bigger. I love the idea of having themed rooms for different libraries. Sanderson just wins on the coolness factor of it being underground.
Yeah.
But I'll give this one to GDT.
You also might just be upset because he hasn't answered your, door knocking when you're outside his house.
It's just me shirtless. Sanderson!
So now you're just knocking his lair.
Screw his lair.